In 1721, there was a smallpox epidemic in Boston. It wasn't the first, it wouldn't be the last, but it was the worst. 850 people died out of a population of about 11,000. Smallpox was terrifying in that time, as it would be today if we did not have the vaccine. And it was, of course, at the time, there was so much that was unknown about disease and how disease spread. At that time, people were even more afraid during that particular epidemic because, and grief-stricken. In fact, it was so bad, and there were so many people dying at such an accelerating rate that the town had to decree that the church bells could only toll once per death because they were tolling all the time. So the ritual that accompanied death changed, as they have for us. As there was a growing awareness, though, that people who had caught smallpox before and survived didn't seem very often to be susceptible to the disease for a second round. And as that growing awareness spread, and as there was increased awareness about some practices that had taken place in Turkey and Africa and other places, the idea of inoculation began to be bandied about. Now, one of the leading proponents for inoculation of smallpox during this epidemic was no lesser light than Cotton Mather. Not often thought of as the most innovative preacher or pastor in the world, but respected and renowned. If people thought he was a little bit cranky, still respected and renowned in Boston at the time, as was his father. And surprisingly to some, he began to strongly advocate for this radical idea of inoculating people against smallpox. Now, I can kind of understand why at the time it seemed a little bit wonky, right? You want to do what? You want to give me a little smallpox? Wait. But as the debate spread, Mather and his father and 4 other clergymen in Boston, began to be advocates for this. And it was wildly controversial. In fact, the 6 of them began to be referred to as inoculation ministers, and it wasn't a compliment. As the debate spread, and there was like throwing things at one another and speaking ill of one another, it was not a pleasant conversation. Let's just say that. But those 6 continued to stand firm in their belief that this would be a good idea and that it could help the wider community of Boston. And they put up with a lot of vitriol, and they put up with a lot of criticism, and they put up with a lot in order to advocate for what they thought would benefit not just them or their families or even just their congregations, but the whole community. In other words, they could have just on the slide and like, here's what we're going to do with a few trusted people and taken care of themselves. But they really put themselves out there along with 1 or 2 doctors. Most of the doctors in Boston at the time were not fans either. And really began to put up with a great deal of scorn in order to do what they thought would benefit the whole city of Boston. Because there's just really something about an epidemic or a pandemic that lays bare the truth that, we are in this together, that our lives are intertwined, and that the things that are good for me are very likely to be good for you. And the things that are good for you are very likely to, at the end of the day, be to my benefit as well. In other words, we're in this together. And our lives are interconnected, and we cannot separate them and make these hard distinctions that we'd often like to make, when it would be more convenient to believe that I only need to look out for me and mine. The times of pandemic and times of epidemic really lay that bare and put it in stark relief. We see another example of that this morning in the text from Matthew. An example of people who believe that the good of others is something they should strive for and seek as well. I'm talking about the 4 friends who bring their paralyzed friend to Jesus. And it's not just that they bring that friend to Jesus, right? Is that they are not deterred by the size of the crowd or the complications of getting said friend to Jesus. I mean, everybody needs friends like these. These guys show up, and the crowd is so thick. There's so many people. There's no pushing through. There's no going around. They cannot get to Jesus unless they go up to the roof. Can you imagine being the homeowner, right? All of a sudden the roof opens up. I mean, this brings really whole new meaning to raise the roof. But they go up in the roof and they remove the roof, and then they dig through the roof, because that's, roofs would not have been like the tiles that we think of, right? So they lower their friend in this particularly vivid text. They lower their friend to Jesus because they are determined to get him help. They are not as interested in propriety or protocol as they are in getting their friend the help of Jesus. One of the things I think is worth noting in this text is Jesus sees the friends' faith. He sees the faith of the people who brought this man to him. And it's their faith that is the thing that creates the space for his healing, for his forgiveness, and his healing. It is their faith that is the mechanism for the rest of his life, right? Their actions, their determination, their faith that things could be different, not for them, but for him, is what creates the space and this opportunity for God's glory to be revealed. Jesus says, come to Capernaum again, and the crowds are following him, and there's a lot going on, but it's their display of faith that gets noticed. And that is, the impetus for all that follows. Theodore Jennings calls it their holy impatience. And that really resonates with me, holy impatience. There's probably some things we ought to be impatient about. It's not usually the things, at least I'm impatient about, but there are some things we ought to be impatient about. And it's the friends' holy impatience and their faith. Now, with friends like these, what might be possible? We'd all be better off if there were more friends like these in the world. We'd all be better off if there were people who were passionate about our well-being and the well-being of the communities in which we live. We would all be better off if there were more people in the world with a holy impatience for doing what needs to be done, no matter what, protocol might say, or no matter what might be polite. But if there were more folks in the world with a holy impatience to bring about the good for our communities rather than just ourselves and our families, what kind of space for God's glory might be created if there were more friends like these? Must have been a real shot in the arm for everyone who saw this take place, who saw these friends and their determination, who saw Jesus see their faith, and who saw what Jesus did in response to their faith. And when they saw this man, because of what Jesus did, get up and walk. The text says, they were amazed, they were astonished, they couldn't believe it. And they said, we've never seen the like of it. We've never seen the like of it. That sort of thing really, really gives you energy and enthusiasm, makes you think anything is possible. Must have been a real shot in the arm for those who saw it. That idiom means something that gives a person immediate energy or renewed enthusiasm. And I've been thinking a lot about that, because the pandemic isn't over, but we can see it narrowing. And I think it's time for us to begin to think about what we need to do to get ourselves ready, to get ready. And what we can do to move beyond the doldrums of this last year and this winter and all that has been, and to turn and face all that is. And we don't want to go into what's next with sort of the way some of us are in these days. And I know some of you have already gotten your shot in the arm, your literal shot in the arm. And I know some of you have gotten the first of your 2 shots in the arm. And I know some of you are still waiting to get your shot in the arm. But wherever you are on that, all of us need a shot in the arm in terms of renewing and restoring and revitalizing ourselves. We all need to be encouraged. And what encouraged that crowd was the faith of those friends. What Jesus saw and responded to was the faith of those friends. With friends like those, what might be possible? People might be restored and renewed and re-energized and readied for what's beyond this. With friends like those. When Jesus saw their faith, he was moved, and it created an opportunity for something amazing that amazed and astonished the crowd. So in what ways is your faith on display in these days? In what ways is your faith made visible? In ways that might amaze and astonish and renew and restore our communities. How can your faith be seen? And when your faith is seen, how might that have an impact on everybody else who sees it? What could your faith do? And what could it do for others? I'm ready to live past this. I'm ready to stop being discouraged and disappointed in people, and I'm ready to expect something more from myself and from others and from our communities. But I also know that sort of begins with me. That when people see our faith, they're more likely to respond in ways that are hopeful and positive and are to the benefit of all of us, or to the good of all of us. The things we do create an opportunity, and that opportunity creates something else, and it's a process. And the process can, if we're willing, begin with us. How might we as a church, as a congregation, as a community of faith, how might our faith be made visible in ways that people might be amazed and astonished at what God can do, in ways that it might spur people to say, I've never seen the like of it, in ways that might help us move beyond where we are and create the space for what can be, in ways that don't leave anyone behind, in ways that are determined that everybody could get the help they need, even if it means raising the roof. How might our faith be on display and made visible? Our trust that Jesus is the answer. And if we could just get to Jesus, things could be different. How might our faith be made visible in ways that would allow people, including ourselves, to believe that anything is possible? May it be said of us, they've never seen the like of it. And the world needs more friends like these. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.